The sound seemed to originate from a place that defied logic. It was an irregular hum, interspersed with melodic tones, resonating through the hull of the Tessera 3 as the exploration vessel orbited Oritha's moon. Carson Hale, a cartographer for the Epsilon Colonization Initiative, adjusted the controls with a mix of curiosity and unease. "Is this a system malfunction or something? Alive?" he asked aloud, but the instruments only displayed anomalies. The moon was a desolate and corrosive rock. No one expected to find any signs of activity there. As he descended to the surface to investigate, Carson was overcome by the feeling that something was watching him. The readings grew more erratic as he approached a ruined rocky formation. When he exited the ship, equipped with a suit resistant to Oritha's toxic conditions, the sound seemed to guide him toward a narrow opening. Inside, he found something that made his heart race. A fallen figure, partially hidden beneath debris, with a silvery glow reflecting the light of his lantern. It was an alien creature. The creature's appearance was both fascinating and sorrowful. Its translucent skin emitted a faint glow, like a dying star, and its eyes shimmered in shades of violet. Carson knew his priority should be safety. His training emphasized never interacting directly with unknown species. But there was something in the creature's gaze, a mixture of pain and plea, that made him hesitate. He activated the universal translator, but no clear response came through. Only a faint sound, like a broken melody. Carson knelt beside it and noticed the creature clutching something. A small metallic artifact covered in pulsating inscriptions. He tried to take it, but the creature pressed the object tightly to its chest, as if its life depended on it. "It's okay. I just want to help," Carson said, unsure if it could understand him. He then retrieved an emergency ration pack and offered it to the creature. It looked at the food, hesitated, and then accepted it with trembling hands. As it ate, a bright tear rolled down its face. It murmured something, and this time, the translator picked up a single word: share. A chill ran down Carson's spine. He didn't fully understand what it meant, but that word carried a weight he couldn't ignore. Something told him that whatever was happening on Orith was far bigger than he could imagine, and that this creature was the key to understanding it. Carson helped the creature sit against a smooth rock inside the cave. Now that it had eaten and its breathing seemed less erratic, he finally managed to get a closer look at the artifact it was holding. It was small, about the size of his hand, but the metal shimmered in an unusual way, almost as if it were alive. He tried scanning the object with the ship's equipment, but the device registered nothing. "What is this?" he asked, knowing full well he wouldn't get a clear answer. The creature pointed at the artifact and then at Carson's chest, as if trying to explain something. Confused, he looked at the object again and noticed it seemed to pulse faintly, like a beating heart. "Do you want me to touch it?" he asked. The creature nodded slowly but with hesitation, as though it was aware of the risk involved. Carson took a deep breath, extended his hand, and touched the artifact's cold surface. Immediately, a wave of energy coursed through Carson's arm, and he was overwhelmed by visions. Star fields, floating structures, and lines of light connecting distant planets filled his mind. Then, darkness consumed the vision, a shadow that seemed to devour the connections, leaving only emptiness in its wake. Carson fell to his knees, gasping for air. The creature watched him closely, its expression filled with something resembling guilt. "Is this a network?" Carson asked. The creature nodded, this time more emphatically. As Carson struggled to process what he had seen, he realized the artifact wasn't just an object. It was a fragment of something much greater. He looked at the creature and saw it clutching the artifact even tighter, as though it were its only hope. "You came here because of this?" he asked. The creature made a gesture that the translator interpreted as protect. A chill ran through Carson. He knew something was wrong but couldn't yet piece it together. Determined to help, Carson brought the creature to the ship. He adjusted the life support systems to accommodate its metabolism, using the readings he managed to extract from the translator. The creature watched his every move attentively, as if evaluating his trustworthiness. "If you want to protect this, you need to tell me more," Carson said as he placed the artifact in a secure compartment. The creature shook its head and, for the first time, spoke something longer. The translator processed it slowly before emitting the phrase, "You are not ready yet." Carson was intrigued but didn't press further. He knew communication would be a gradual process. Over the next few hours, he studied the artifact while the creature rested. The energy readings emanating from it were unstable but displayed patterns that seemed to repeat. He realized that, in some way, the object was interacting with the ship's systems, as though it were trying to connect to something larger. "Whatever this is, it doesn't belong here," he murmured to himself. Deep down, he knew the artifact carried both answers and dangers. As Carson observed the artifact, a new projection emerged from it. This time, he saw an entire planet being consumed by the same shadow he had seen earlier. The image was detailed, showing cities descending into chaos and structures vanishing into darkness. Carson felt the weight of the vision and turned to the creature. "This is what you're trying to stop, isn't it?" The creature looked at him with an expression that blended sadness and hope. The translator captured a single word. "Yes." Carson felt as if the artifact had a life of its own. From the moment he touched its surface, he knew he was dealing with something that defied everything he understood about technology and existence. The projections, the energy waves, and the creature's behavior all indicated that the object was more than just a device. It was a connection to something vast and incomprehensible. He watched the creature as it stared at the ship's screens, as if trying to calculate how much time they had left. "You're running? But from whom or what?" Carson asked. The translator struggled to process the answer. Shadow, the term echoed in Carson's mind, reminding him of the visions of darkness consuming the worlds connected by the network. He knew he needed to understand more to act, but the information was limited. Carson decided to try deciphering the artifact's energy patterns by connecting it to the ship's analytical systems. As soon as he did, the ship was filled with a sharp sound, like a distant scream. The artifact began projecting a new image. This time, a group of alien figures similar to the creature, all connected by threads of light. "Is this your species?" Carson asked. She nodded, but her expression turned somber. The image shifted again, showing the same figures now in chaos. The threads of light connecting them began to break, one by one, as the shadow advanced. Carson felt a weight in his chest as he watched the destruction. "You depended on this connection," he said, more to himself than to her. The creature responded with a single gesture, pointing to the artifact. The translator processed the message, "Fragment of the network. Last hope." Carson began to grasp the magnitude of what he was dealing with. The artifact was a fragment of a network that had linked entire civilizations, allowing them to share knowledge, energy, and perhaps even consciousness. But this same network had attracted something, an entity that consumed connections as if they were sustenance. "You shut down the network to protect yourselves," Carson concluded. The creature hesitated before murmuring, "Too late." Over the next few hours, Carson and the creature worked together to interpret the artifact's projections. He noticed the creature growing increasingly restless, as if sensing an approaching presence. When he asked, she pointed to the ship screens, where Carson saw energy readings spiking around Orith. "Someone is coming," she said, her words heavy with urgency. Carson knew time was running out. "If it's the shadow, why are we still here?" he asked. She replied, "Choice." Carson tried to understand what she meant. The creature seemed to believe he had some crucial role to play, but he still didn't know what it was. During a pause, she finally approached and placed the artifact in his hands again. Carson felt a wave of energy surge through him, and more visions appeared. This time, he saw the network expanding, connecting new worlds, but also awakening the shadow looming on the horizon. The message was clear. Reactivating the network could save civilizations, but also carried an incalculable risk. "You want me to decide?" Carson asked, and the creature simply nodded. Before Carson could respond, the ship detected a new anomaly. An unidentified alien vessel entered Orith's orbit, sending a direct signal to the Tessera 3. Carson accepted the transmission, and a holographic figure appeared. an imposing humanoid entity with fluid features. "You touched what you should not have," the voice said, reverberating through the cabin. "The artifact is a key, but what it unlocks could doom everyone. Explain yourself." Carson felt his breathing quicken, but he knew he couldn't back down. "I'm just trying to understand," he replied. The figure tilted its head. "Then understand quickly. Ruin is coming." Carson stared at the holographic figure with a mixture of curiosity and fear. The entity seemed to be made of a substance that defied definition. Parts of it flowed like water, while others were as solid as rock. "Who are you?" Carson asked. The figure replied, "We are the guardians of the ruin. Our task is to prevent the network from being used to awaken that which consumes all." Carson could sense the seriousness in its words, but something about it bothered him. "And if you fail? What happens then?" The figure looked at him intensely. "Then we do what must be done. We eliminate the threat, even if it means destroying worlds connected to the network." The threat was clear, but Carson couldn't ignore what he had learned from the creature. He glanced at her, now standing close to the artifact, as if protecting the last fragment of her civilization. "She believes the network can be restored without awakening the ruin," Carson said, trying to explain. The Guardian replied coldly, "That belief has already doomed worlds before. You do not understand what is at stake." Carson clenched his fists. "Then explain it to me. Don't ask me to decide something you're hiding from me." The figure raised a hand, and the artifact reacted, projecting a new series of images. Carson saw what appeared to be the network's beginning, a monumental construction that united distant civilizations into a system for sharing energy, ideas, and consciousness. He saw how the network brought eras of peace and progress. But then the vision shifted. Something emerged from within the network, a presence that seemed to use the very connections to spread like a virus, corrupting everything it touched. The ruin did not come from outside, the Guardian explained. It was born from the ambition to connect everything. When there are no limits, harmony turns to chaos. Carson felt the weight of the revelations, but he still couldn't accept the idea of destroying the network completely. What if there's a way to restore it with safeguards? Something to prevent the ruin from spreading? It was a risky idea, but the creature seemed to react with hope upon hearing him. The Guardian, however, remained unmoved. "We have tried. Every attempt ends the same way: destruction. Connection is power. And where there is power, there will always be something willing to use it." The tension in the cabin grew as Carson realized time was running out. The ship's sensors showed an increase in energy pulses on Orith, as if the moon was responding to the alien ship's proximity. The creature approached Carson, grabbing his arm and murmuring something that the translator processed as, "You saw. Choose." He looked at her and realized that, for her, the network was more than technology. It was the essence of her species, something she couldn't abandon, even knowing the danger. Carson turned to the Guardian. "You say you protect the network, but you also say you're ready to destroy it. How is that protection? It sounds more like fear than safeguarding." The figure remained silent for a moment before responding. "Fear and wisdom are sometimes the same thing. Our mission is not to keep the network alive, but to ensure it does not destroy what remains. You stand at a point of convergence, human. Whatever choice you make will echo across the cosmos." Carson knew he couldn't escape the decision. He looked at the artifact and then at the creature, who watched him with eyes full of expectation and sorrow. "If I restore the network, everyone will be at risk," he said. "But if I destroy it, you lose everything you fought for." The creature placed her hand on the artifact and looked at Carson with a firmness he hadn't seen before. "Network for all," she said. Carson felt a chill. It wasn't just a technological decision. It was a choice about the kind of future he was willing to create. Carson paced back and forth on the ship's bridge, feeling the weight of a decision that seemed impossible. The artifact was now fully active, emitting pulses of light that resonated in sync with the moon's readings. The creature stayed close to the device, watching it with focus and an expression of expectation. Meanwhile, the holographic Guardian remained motionless, its presence looming like a shadow of judgment. "Whatever I do, someone will pay the price," Carson said aloud, more to himself than to them. "You cannot save everyone," the Guardian replied, its voice echoing impassively. "The network is a paradox. It brings progress, but it demands sacrifices. The ruin is merely the extreme reflection of what happens when ambition surpasses prudence." Carson stopped and stared at the hologram. "Then what's the point? If it's doomed to fail, why do you still keep it in fragments?" The Guardian hesitated, as if carefully choosing its words. "Because connection is what makes us alive, even when we know it might destroy us." The creature, silent until now, raised her hand and touched the artifact. Instantly, a new projection filled the bridge. This time, Carson saw not just the past but also glimpses of possible futures. In one, the network was restored, and civilizations collaborated like never before, sharing knowledge and resources. But the shadow lingered, a threat that could emerge at any moment. In the other future, the network was destroyed, and civilizations returned to isolation. Some thrived, but many collapsed. "Collective choice," the creature said, her eyes fixed on Carson. Carson felt his heart racing. He knew he was facing something far greater than himself. A decision that would not only affect the present but also shape generations to come. He looked at the creature and asked, "Why do you believe it's worth the risk? Why not just let this die and find another way?" The creature hesitated before responding, her voice fragile yet determined. "Because living alone is not living," the Guardian intervened again. "If you choose to restore the network, know that it will attract the ruin. It is not a possibility, it is a certainty. But if you choose to destroy it, the sacrifice of this creature and her species will have been in vain. What kind of future are you willing to accept?" Carson closed his eyes, trying to organize his thoughts. He recalled the visions the artifact had shown him. Interconnected worlds, but vulnerable, and isolated worlds, but stagnant. He knew any decision would come at a cost. The moment of choice arrived as the ship's systems began to sound alarms. Something was approaching quickly, a signal that felt familiar but was charged with hostile energy. Carson looked at the Guardian, who gazed back with a grave expression. "The ruin is here," it said. "If you choose to restore the network, it will have access to everything. If you choose to destroy it, we can contain the impact, but you will be closing doors that may never open again." Carson turned to the creature one last time. She held the artifact with trembling hands, but her gaze was steady. "Network, for all," she repeated. He felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Fear, hope, doubt. But he knew he couldn't delay any longer. He placed his hands on the console and made his choice. As the systems began to respond, the artifact shone intensely, and Carson heard the creature's voice in his mind. "Thank you." The bridge of the Tessera 3 was engulfed in an intense light as Carson finalized his choice. The artifact, connected to the ship's systems and synchronized with Ortha's energy pulses, unleashed a wave of force that expanded beyond the moon, reaching nearby systems. At the center of the chamber, the creature stood tall, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, though her body seemed to be disintegrating. "Network complete," she said, her voice fragile yet full of conviction. Carson realized something profound was happening. The ship's readings showed the network reactivating on a scale he could barely comprehend. Nearby planets and stations began emitting signals, responding to the artifact's call. At the same time, the sensors detected a growing presence, the ruin. He felt the weight of his decision, but before he could act, the Guardian's holographic figure reappeared. "You have chosen the most dangerous path," it said, its voice heavy with disapproval, "but also the only one that gives us a chance to survive." The creature, now visibly weakened, approached Carson and extended the artifact, which had lost some of its original glow. She placed it in his hands and spoke for the last time. "Now, all of you," before he could fully grasp her meaning, she disappeared into a cloud of luminous particles that merged with the artifact's energy field. Carson stood still, holding the object that now felt lighter but infinitely more significant. He realized she had sacrificed what remained of her existence to stabilize the network. The Guardian observed the scene silently for a moment before speaking again. Her sacrifice bought time, but this is not the end. The ruin has not been destroyed, only contained. Now, it is up to the connected civilizations to decide how to use what they have received. And it is up to you to ensure they do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Carson felt the weight of those words like an overwhelming responsibility. He wasn't a leader, but now he seemed to be the only one who truly understood what was at stake. As the network expanded, Carson saw the first transmissions arriving. Civilizations that had been isolated were beginning to respond, some with excitement, others with distrust. Some messages expressed gratitude, while others carried threats of war. "This won't be easy," Carson murmured as he watched the transmissions pile up on the ship's monitors. He knew the network's potential was immense, but he also knew humanity and other species would need to mature to handle it. The artifact began emitting a steady pulse, like a beacon guiding the new connections. Carson carefully placed it in a containment capsule and integrated it into the Tessera 3 systems. He knew it would be at the center of everything to come. "You made a choice," the Guardian said, its form beginning to fade. "But remember, connection is both a gift and a curse. If you do not learn from this, the ruin will return. And next time, no one will be here to stop it." Carson sat in the command chair, staring at the stars surrounding the ship. He knew his mission had changed completely. He was no longer just a cartographer. He was now a guardian of the connection, tasked with protecting something that could both save and doom entire civilizations. As the Tessera 3 accelerated away from Orith, he glanced at the artifact one last time. "Network for all," he murmured, feeling a mix of hope and fear. Deep down, he knew the future was uncertain, but it was also full of possibilities. Carson gazed at the stars, now more conscious and interconnected than ever before. The transmissions flowing into the Tessera 3 indicated that the network was gaining strength, linking worlds that had long been isolated. Some civilizations sent signals of cooperation, while others displayed distrust and even hostility. He knew that connection, no matter how powerful, was also vulnerable. "It's not the technology that will save us," he thought. "It's the choices we make with it." The artifact, now stabilized, pulsed softly in its capsule. Carson felt that it was not just a device but a living presence, carrying fragments of the creature's consciousness and those who had contributed to the network. It was both a legacy and a challenge. "Network for all," he murmured again, feeling the weight of the creature's sacrifice. She had believed in something greater than herself, a belief that was now his responsibility to honor. The Guardian, once so impassive, had left one final message before disappearing. "You are now the Guardians. Remember, the network is a reflection of who you are. If you fail to protect it, it will not be the ruin that destroys you. It will be yourselves." Carson couldn't shake those words from his mind. He knew the true challenge was not containing the ruin but teaching the connected civilizations to respect the power they now shared. As the Tessera 3 departed Orith's orbit, Carson recorded a log for the Epsilon Colonization Initiative. He recounted the events on the moon, his encounter with the creature, and the decision to restore the network. But instead of detailed instructions, he left an open message. "What I found here is not something we can control alone. It is an invitation, but also a warning. We must decide, as a species, how to respond to this connection. We must learn to share without destroying. Because, in the end, that is what will define us." The ship accelerated into hyperspace, leaving behind Orith's flickering light. Carson knew this wasn't a farewell but the beginning of something greater. The network was now a part of all civilizations that chose to embrace it, but the price of its existence was far from paid. He didn't know if humanity was ready for the challenge, but he felt it was worth trying. As he looked at the artifact, he thought of the creature and her final words, "Network for all." He realized that connection wasn't just a choice, it was a test. And that test was only just beginning.